Yes, stand by. Good afternoon and welcome to S24 Insight. Today, we are not starting with politics. We are starting with what politics often forgets: delivery. Across northern Nigeria, especially in conflict-affected communities, people don't debate governance as theory. They meet it as a school without teachers, a clinic without drugs, a budget without results, and sometimes as aid that comes late or doesn't come at all. And now, the pressure is rising. Global funding is tightening. Local needs are expanding. Conflict shocks continue. So the question becomes urgent. When aid shrinks, do institutions rise or do citizens carry the whole burden alone? Our guest today sits at that intersection of governance, advocacy, and frontline reality. Abubakar Sadiq Muazu is the Executive Director of Center for Advocacy, Transparency, and Accountability Initiative, CATAI, a civil society organization with programs across education, protection, peace building, livelihoods, and citizen accountability. CATAI has also worked with partners and coalitions in the development space and recently noted Muazu's election to the Nigerian Humanitarian Fund Advisory Board. Abubakar, welcome to this S24 Insight this afternoon.
Thank you for having me, Halima.
You're welcome. And this is really big for me because development space is a space I really want to understand. But just briefly, just take us through what interests you or what took you to the development space in the first place, just in a few sentences.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a great opportunity for me to be in your studio to have this great conversation. For me, I believe as a young person growing up in the conflict zone of the northeastern Nigeria, it has exposed me to understand the real needs of what people need in terms of humanitarian needs, in terms of conflict devastation, and in terms of the realities of what or how people can bounce back better in terms of where they are to where they want to be. Growing up in the Northeast, I have the passion to see that I support and I contribute to people in need. That was what ventured me into volunteering to quite a number of organizations. Volunteering to organizations, working for different organizations, to the extent that I founded the Center for Advocacy, Transparency, and Accountability Initiative. CATAI is a youth-led non-governmental organization that operates across the Northeast and beyond, currently in Nigeria. And we have been working around humanitarian development and peace-building nexus. All our works revolves on how we can strengthen the resilience of young people, the resilience of affected population, the resilience and bringing that gap or filling that gap that exists in terms of government support to ensure that service delivery reach to the people in need across grassroots communities. Most importantly, people have access to healthcare, people have access to education, people have access to quality water, sanitation, and hygiene, which will give back to their livelihoods and many more. So this is one of the key things, or I can say is my push towards seeing that I join this space, to add value, towards seeing that I join this space, to add the little contribution that I have by mobilizing group of young people to serve as ambassadors, to serve as volunteers, to serve as social workers in supporting this initiative. We started CATAI in the year 2018, and today I'm so excited to say that we're almost 8 years growing bigger to the verge of a group of numbers of staffs of more than 300 aid workers across Borno, Adama, and Yobe. So it gladdens my heart to see that we have made this level of contribution. We have worked with different funders, different donors, different institutions to add value to people in need across communities.
That's really lovely for a young person. You've worked in communities like you've mentioned where governance is not speech, it's survival. When you hear citizens say government is far, what do they mean in practical terms, considering your experience?
Well, I think the nexus of both humanitarian and development is key for me. That is how I started as someone that has been in the accountability space, and that gives me the opportunity to work closely with grassroots community. Governance, beyond just having understanding of this is our elected governor, people need to understand that there are elected representatives from the legislative arm of government to the executive arm of government, the judiciary, as well as knowing the intersection in terms of the local government structure, the state level structure, and the federal level structure. What will interest you to know is that most at times when you go to these grassroots communities, they are disconnected with the first tier of government that is with them. They don't even understand who is their own local government chairman, who is their own member state house of assembly, who is their own councillor in their ward level, and many more. So this disconnect them with what governance is all about, taking or pushing blames in terms of the center at the federal level, putting hands president, or at the state level, putting hand as the governor. So citizens have understanding of what governance is all about, understanding who need to do what at what level, who need to advocate for what at what level, who need to push for their interests at what level. So all of these things are gaps that we identify working at grassroots communities, because I tend to see that even citizens push some of these liabilities or responsibilities to their state legislators, of which, if you look at the mandate of a legislator, is totally different. If not because of election periods and other key things, you can't see people asking critical questions about what needs to be done and how these things need to be done. So I believe the gap at the grassroots community is understanding what the governance is all about.
I just wanted to come to that. And also what?
Yeah, and also beyond that, access to service delivery. Key thing that has to do with their human rights, which has to do with education, which has to do with healthcare, and which has to do with water, sanitation, and hygiene. So all of these grassroots across Nigeria, this is a major problem. But if you go to locations like the Northeast, you will tend to see that because of the impact of the conflict and because of the devastating destruction that happens across those locations, you will tend to see that displaced communities are being affected. Displaced people are moving, are roaming up and down to see that they have refuge as a place that they can have access to service delivery.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, when they say government is far, it's because there is no understanding of the tiers of government and what everyone is supposed to do. Katai describes its work as strengthening service delivery through advocacy and citizen empowerment. In 1 minute, what does service delivery mean on the ground for you?
Well, for us, as I mentioned, service delivery is to see people have access to basic needs of life. Most importantly, people have access to healthcare, education, water, sanitation, and hygiene. These are key basics that as human, you need to have this thing before any other key thing. And beyond that, our work intersects between both engaging with the government and engaging with the humanitarian space. We have been providing humanitarian intervention across a lot of communities in the Northeast. But beyond that, we do advocacies to engage with government, to strengthen institutions, to advocate for policies that will be sustainable in terms of budgetary allocation, budgetary releases, and as well as budgetary implementation across these communities. So we work around to strengthen government understanding that, oh, these are the priorities of citizens. Beyond just sitting at the center of governance to say that, oh, we want to implement A, B, C, and D, there is a need to engage with community people to understand the citizen-driven needs beyond just the executive-driven needs and the legislative-driven needs. So for us, advocacies, when we talk about it, is how we engage with government to understand the realities of the work of these people. For us, when we talk about service delivery, is seeing people have access to this basic need of life, particularly water, education, and health.
That's really interesting to know. In many conflict-affected areas, the state is present as security, but absent as services. Why does that imbalance persist, especially in places or states like Borno?
Well, I believe to some extent, if you study the conflict very well, sometimes conflict do emerge as a result of scarce resources. And sometimes conflict do emerge as a result of limited resources that create a kind of fight and other cadence. Imbalance. Yeah. So as the population grow, there is a need for government to expand and stretch its own services across these communities. When people do not have access to school, those people would be vulnerable to indoctrination by people associated with armed groups, indoctrination by people that have a different mindset and people that have a kind of a foreign mindset that will make them to have cause problem within the society. So I believe government need to do better in providing access to these basic needs of life, particularly when people have access to education, their mindset will change, the way they will even reproduce children will be better. Because when you educate a girl, she'll get to understand that there are processes of child spacing before you add another child. There is a need for you to educate the first one before you move to another kid. Even the sexual reproduction perspective will improve, because you will tend to see that you have reduction in maternal mortality and many more. So these are key issues that when government puts systems in place, when government put these services in place, it will at the end of the day add value to how the governance index will be reviewed. And within the society, you tend to see that conflict is being reduced drastically. You tend to see that insecurity is being reduced drastically.
Severest minimum.
Exactly.
And let's talk trust. When citizens stop trusting institutions, what replaces governance? Community leaders, NGOs, informal networks, or despair?
Well, for me, I think when citizens distrust government, the next key thing is that to some extent, if the community people provide them with what they want, they trust them. And if the NGOs do provide them what they want, they trust them. And as well, I want you to understand that if people associated with armed group can provide them with what they want, they will trust them. That is why across some communities, you tend to see that people that are causing problems are taxing citizens at some of these LGS, telling them that you can't farm until you provide us with A, B, C, and D. Even when you farm, we'll provide you with security, and people will give them money. So government need to understand that the trust building it's not just beyond providing the security, but having dialogue. Sometimes it's to have dialogue at the community level for these people to understand what the government is doing, for these people to understand that the implication of joining these armed groups and other key things, and how they can pass information. But when there is an issue, and at the end of the day, the state armed group attack the community, burn houses, instead of discussing with them at the best way of addressing these issues, people will definitely limit their trust in government. So when they limit their trust in government, the next key thing is the people that will provide them with trust. So for us at the civil society aspect, at the NGO perspective, we have been the bridge between the citizen as well as the government. We have been trying to do a lot of advocacy to engage with the government, because we complement the effort of the government. As civil society, you can't take over the role of the government. So we complement the effort of the government to see that taxpayers' resources is being judiciously utilized across these communities. These citizens also give their of social contract in ensuring that they meet up with their obligations and many more.
Well, that's really interesting to listen to you talk about. If you had to name the one governance failure that feeds everything else, education gaps, unemployment, insecurity, what is it that you're going to name it?
Well, I believe unemployment is also one key thing, but most importantly, before you be employed, you need to have some skills. So education is one major thing. So education, when you strengthen the education institution, you will tend to see that aspect of security will improve, aspect of employment will improve, because the kind of education that you provide matters a lot. If you are given an education that has to do with social skills and other key things, you tend to see that you are producing young people, you tend to see that you are producing amazing, talented people that will add value to the entire country as a whole. So we have seen a society whereby our nature of curriculum is such a one that to some extent it's not even meeting up with the reality of the global standard. To some extent.
But you would talk about local reality, not just global standard.
Not just about the local realities, but the global standard to some extent has a connection, because you need to connect local people with the market. So if you educate the local people with the market, even if within the education that you provide to them, that okay, as you are rearing animals, once you provide, there is a food chain that you are providing in place and meeting up. So these are key things that if someone is coming out with his cow, there is someone that needs the milk, there is someone that will process the milk, there is someone that will take out. So that kind of blockchain that is needed, what kind of investment is needed at the community level will definitely contribute to ensuring that, one, we have reduction in insecurity, reduction in job, in unemployment. But most importantly, there is a need for total overhaul in terms of our educational sector to meet up with the needs and the realities that we are facing across the community.
Realities, most importantly. And let's take a quick break. When we return, we move from pain to power. Can citizens enforce accountability without becoming enemies of the government? Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's still S24 Insight, where we've been speaking to the Executive Director of Katai and in person of Abubakar Sadiq Muazu, who has been doing a lot in terms of changing the narrative in the development space in the northeastern Nigeria, in extension to the whole of Nigeria, because when a region is affected, of course, other regions fill the gap, and sometimes it trickles down. And let's move to the part of citizen accountability, budget tracking, procurement and proof. Your work actually said that you emphasize on citizen-led accountability, budget tracking, procurement monitoring, and policy advocacy. What's the simplest way to explain this to an average citizen in Borno, Yobe, or Adamawa?
Well, I believe when we talk of budget tracking and citizen accountability, there is a need within the cycle, from electioneering cycle to budgeting cycle to the implementation, to see that development is coming to community. It's a responsibility for any citizen to hold his own or her own voter's card, to elect the right people into the position of power. But most importantly, there is a tool that is guiding the implementation of governance, which has to do with the annual budget that is being developed across all the state, local government, and at the federal level. This has to do with all the overall expenditures that government is trying to see that, okay, these are the plans that we want to implement, these are the forecasts that we have done, and many more. So in doing that, government usually used to understand what are their own inflows, what are their own sources of revenues and other key things. In the process, they tend to put in the demands and needs and aspiration of citizens. That is why I say that a citizen-led ambition or citizen-led needs that is being put in budget. There are executive needs that is in the budget. There are also, now that we have a kind of legislative constituency project that legislators will prioritize to put in budget, and many more. This has to do with a strong level of how citizens can come in. Citizens can serve as monitors free of charge for government. But because of the level of ourselves, to people within us, when resources is being allocated, people did not understand that, oh, a budget is allocated, resources that is being forecast. They tend to see it as a resources because that trust is not there. Citizens did not have that information. When the budget is being assented by the governor, mobilization of revenues has been done, allocation of resources will be done to MDS for them to start implementation. Citizens don't understand all of these key things. The only thing they understand, the money is within the budget. But is there resources to finance the budget? Citizens need to understand that. So is there resources? When the resources has been released, has the implementation begun? Someone can start implementation of certain things, but by the time the implementation began, you tend to see that the work will stop. The next releases has not been done. But if government is providing this information, releasing this information for citizens to be aware that, oh, we have given so million of naira to Halima to implement so level of activities across community A, B, C, and D, citizens will be aware that resources with Halima. So when they did not see that action, they will hold Halima accountable and they will come back to government and help government. But because government is not willing to provide that information, people will not even know that Halima has that resources. And at the end of the day, that resources will be embezzled across those communities.
That's really sad. That's really sad.
What we are trying to see is that how can we provide access to this information? And I'm glad that in the past few years, there are a lot of improvement across the federal level and at the state level with the SIFTA's support. That is the State Transparency and Physical Accountability Support of the World Bank, where budget documents are being released on website as an open source, where accountability Federal Auditor General's accountability report are being released. But citizens at the grassroots level, we need to demonstrate it by having citizen-driven budget, simplifying what all of this English of revenue expenditure, capital expenditure, recurrent expenditure, whatsoever, to simplify it for people to understand that, oh, this is what we are dealing with and this is how it should be done. So our own interest is to see that a common man in grassroots community have access to this information, that when he sees something is being constructed in his own community, he can ask questions that are very important. Even the contractor will be like, oh, so they have access to this information. Let me work in line with the BOQs and other key things. So these are key things that we aspire to see and some of the little things that we do as an institution.
Thank you. BOQs, you mean Bill of Quantities, because maybe in a layman, we don't know what BOQ is. Thank you. And I think let's look at what Nigerians used to say. Many Nigerians think budgets are government business. What is the strongest argument for you? Is it just government business or they need to key into it?
You see, that is why I said it's important. As people, now that we are approaching the election period, you tend to see people trying to join the electoral cycle. But by the time when these elected leaders are being elected, people forget the fact that there is a need for them to also follow up with the budget cycle. The budget cycle starts with the stage from the release of the call circular, the release, the appropriation stage, that the preparation stage, where the state executive from the Ministry of Budget and Planning can start having their own planning to take it to the state assembly, where the state assembly can do the appropriation processes, provide it back to the governor for assenting, implementation phase, monitoring phase. It's a cycle. You tend to see that some citizens can only clap to their governors when they are at the stage of assenting the budget, or when it becomes a bill, or when they are at the stage of presenting to the State House of Assembly by the governor, they will just escort him, clap for him that they are doing that. But beyond that, there is one key thing that they need to be part of the process. During the process of the budget development, there are town hall meetings that is being conducted at grassroots communities to get to hear the opinions of citizens. What are your own needs? What are your own priorities? How can you bring all of these needs into the realities of the budget? So it is important for us to see that when citizens have this access to information, they will contribute by being part of the budget formation. During the implementation phase, after the assenting, they'll be part of the implementation to provide feedback to government. So at the end of the day, you'll get to see that there are a lot of development coming to us, moving up and down. And one big mistake that some of the state we are facing is that some government tend to see budget tracking as a prognosing by citizens, which is their all right also. So there is a need for government, state government and local government to encourage citizens to do that, so they can serve as an accountability partner to them, to ensure that they are putting them on track when things are not done rightly. They will ensure that these things are being done rightly, and the resources that is being allocated trickle down for the benefit, for the needs intended across the communities.
Yes, so civil society is sometimes accused of embarrassing government. You've just mentioned something like that, prognosing. And how do you think we can hold government or our leaders accountable without turning accountability into like a fight?
Well, I believe to some extent, I used to tell people that you need to be clear around what advocacy is all about, when to advocate, when to also engage as an activist. So people mix up engaging as an advocate and engaging as an activist. Sometimes engaging as an advocate tend to give you room to have a dialogue, to mediate between government, citizens, and as well civil society organizations. Sometimes also the engagement cannot be there, but you need to put in the heart of an activist to protest, to do other things before the government can listen to you. The sad reality is that across the globe, a lot of nations, sometimes it is when you protest that government tend to listen. It's not just a Nigerian factor alone, but if you go to a lot of nations, you tend to see that, oh, government don't even listen until when you protest. But also there are right time that you simplify to provide a kind of policy brief notes, analyzing policy statement of government to provide brief for them and feedback. So sometimes when you see these key things, it contributes in seeing that things are being addressed amicably without resulting into, oh, you are prognosing and doing other things. And one key thing is that government need the civil society because they put them on check. And also to some extent, sometimes government need the civil society when they need loans and other key things, because the civil society can attest to the fact that, oh, we will be an accountability partner to them when they are utilizing those resources. So government should not just identify when they need citizens, when they need loans, or when they need other key things in terms of civil society, but they also take them as partners in progress to take feedback, to take contribution as they work closely with grassroots community.
Now let's look at more people-centered stuff, starting with the girls' education, early marriage, and the stability question. We'll take one or two because of time and call it a wrap. You are publicly associated with Girls' Education Advocacy, right? And Global Action Network highlights your work around girl-child programming and education support. Why does girls' education remain one of the most tough battles in the Northeast?
Well, I believe it's one of the tough battles because of culture and religion. And to some extent, as I mentioned earlier, when you educate a girl, you educate the entire society, the entire nation. When you educate a girl, there are high tendencies that even your own mortality rate will reduce. Because if you look at the percentage of maternal mortality, you tend to see is at the high rate. So, but when you educate a girl will tend to understand her own system, will tend to understand that, oh, this is what is manifesting within her body, to clearly understand where she needs to go to hospital for antenatals and other key things, thereby reducing the initial cost of maternal mortality. And also you tend to see that a lot of young girls would have access to information and knowledge around menstrual hygiene management. They will tend to differentiate between when they need to do what and other key things, reducing infections and other key things within the society. So this is very important that when you invest in girls, that I encourage a lot of states across Nigeria that there is a need to have a gender-responsive service delivery unit in their own state. The gender responsiveness of that nature will contribute significantly on understanding the realities of women and the realities of boys. I have worked in Adamawa State. I have seen the nature of how they have been very supportive in terms of girls' education. We have worked to come up with education policy that is looking at the lens of gender in it. When they are budgeting, they look at the lens of gender in it. And likewise, some state that we have worked, even in Borno, we have seen a significant level of progress in that. So it's important to see how best within girl-child education to invest more in girl-child education, thereby reducing these key things. So government need to stand on their feet, but at the state level, at the local government level, and at the federal level, and put a lot of stringent rules to parents and caregivers that are not willing to educate their own.
Now, let's take this last one before rapid fire. You've also partnered with organizations like Action Aid on youth policy-related work, as shown on Katai LinkedIn presence. What makes partnership effective? Shared goals, data, speed, or trust? In a short answer. Okay. And then finally, if a governor is watching you this afternoon, what should they do in the first 100 days to protect vulnerable communities when aid stops or shrinks?
Clearly understand the needs of the citizen by prioritizing these three key things: education, water, and health. Once these three things will be provided, I want to tell you that a lot of people will fit in and a lot of realities will fit in. These are the key things that are even needed in terms of infrastructure for people to invest their resources across various states. So governments across all states, they need to look at the aspect of the education, the quality of the education delivery, and prioritize beyond just the formal nature of education, the vocational education across their states, so that young people can have skills that can compete across different.
Thank you so much, Abubakar Sadiq Muaz. Let's quickly do a 60 seconds rapid fire. It's short and answer simple yes or no. Let's see the way you're going to take this. You've been serious all along, so let's do something really more relaxing. If you're to choose between evidence, which would you choose?
Evidence.
Budget or promise?
Access.
NGOs or institution? What?
Institutions.
One word for governance in the Northeast today.
One word as?
One word for governance. If you describe governance in one word for the Northeast today.
Imagine institutions.
Just one word. Okay. One word for the Northeast in 10 years. Where did you see? One word.
One word. Growing rapidly or something like that.
Growing rapidly. Okay. One habit leaders must stop in the Northeast.
Fake promises.
Fake promises. One thing citizens must start to do to change the narrative.
Participate and join governance.
One reform Nigeria can't postpone anymore.
Electioneering campaigns, what is it called? Election systems need to be reformed.
Thank you so much, Abubakar Sadiq Muazzez, for joining us on S24 Insight today. Today's takeaway for me is simple and loud. When trust collapses, society becomes expensive. But when accountability becomes culture, development becomes possible. Because in the end, governance is not a speech. It is a school that opens. It is a clinic that works, a budget that shows results, and citizens who can verify what powers claim. I am Halima Abdurrauf, and this has been S24 Insight on S24 Television. And bye for now. See you again next time. Z, come back.